The rain had been falling for 3 hours when Maren stepped out of the small bookshop on Bond Street. She had known it would rain. She had seen the low grey clouds that morning and had made her plans around them. In her hand she carried a small black umbrella, plain and slightly worn at the edges, but strong enough to keep her dry. The bell above the shop door made a soft sound as she closed it behind her. The smell of wet stone rose up from the pavement. The smell of coal smoke drifted down from the chimneys above. She could hear the sound of horses' hooves on the wet street, muffled and slow, and the sound of water running in the gutters along the edge of the road. She was 22 years old, and she was walking home alone. This was not what most young women of her station would have done. But Maren was not most young women. She was the daughter of a country vicar who had died 2 winters ago, and she now lived in a small set of rooms above a milliner's shop with her aunt, and she had learned in the last 2 years to do many things alone. She lifted her umbrella. She stepped carefully around a puddle. She began the walk home. The rain came down harder as she moved. It struck the top of her umbrella with a steady sound, like small stones falling on a tin roof. The cold worked its way through her thin gloves. Her boots were already damp at the toes. She kept her head down and walked on. She was thinking about the book in her small cloth bag. It had cost her more than she should have spent. Her aunt would frown when she saw it. But Maren had been saving her coins for 6 weeks, one at a time, hidden in a small tin behind the tea, and today she had finally bought it. A book of poems by a woman she had read about in a magazine. It was the first book she had bought for herself since her father had died. She turned the corner onto a narrower street. The wind was harder here. Her umbrella pulled at her arm. She held it tighter. That was when she saw him. He was standing under the overhang of a tall stone building, pressed close to the wall to try to stay out of the rain. But the overhang was small, and the rain was heavy and blowing sideways, and he was already wet through. His dark coat clung to his shoulders. His hat was gone, or he had never had one. Water ran down his face in small silver lines. He was not looking at her. He was looking down the street, as if he was waiting for something. A carriage, perhaps, but there were no carriages on this street. There were only closed doors and empty windows and the rain. Maren slowed her steps. She could have walked past him. Later, when she thought about it, she was not sure why she did not. He was a stranger. He was a man. She was a young woman alone. Every rule she had been taught said to keep walking. But he looked so cold. She stopped a few feet away from him. He did not notice her at first. His eyes were fixed on some point far down the street. There was something about the set of his mouth, something tight and tired, that made her think he had been standing there for a long time. "Sir," she said. He turned his head. His eyes were dark, almost black in the grey light. They looked at her without expression. "Yes?" His voice was low. It surprised her. It was not the voice of a beggar or a working man. It was a voice that had been taught to speak clearly. Maren held out her umbrella. "Please take this," she said. "You are getting very wet." He looked at the umbrella. Then he looked at her. He did not move. "And what will you do?" he asked. "I have not far to go," she said. She was not sure if this was true. She had at least another quarter-hour of walking. But she said it firmly. "You look as though you have been standing here some time. Please, take it." He still did not move. "I could not," he said. "You could," she said. She stepped closer and held the umbrella out until the handle was almost touching his hand. "It is only an umbrella. It is not a great gift, but it will keep the rain off your head." Something changed in his face. It was not a smile. It was something smaller, a softening perhaps, at the corners of his eyes. Slowly, he reached out and took the handle. His fingers brushed hers for a moment. His hand was cold, colder than hers, colder than she had expected. "Thank you," he said. She took a step back. The rain hit her at once, hard and cold on the top of her head. Her bonnet would be ruined. She had known it would be. She did not mind, she told herself. She did not mind at all. "Good day, sir," she said. She turned to walk on. "Wait," he said. She looked back. He was standing under her umbrella now, holding it above his head. He looked at her, and for a moment there was something in his face that she could not name. It was not gratitude. It was something more careful than that, something that was trying to understand her. "What is your name?" he asked. She hesitated. A young woman should not give her name to a strange man on a street, but she had already given him her umbrella. It seemed a small thing after that. "Marin," she said. "Marin Ashcombe." He gave a small nod, as though he was setting the name down somewhere, safe inside himself. "Miss Ashcombe." "And you, sir?" He looked at her for a long moment. The rain fell around them. Somewhere down the street a door opened and closed. "My name is Dorian," he said at last. "Just Dorian?" The corner of his mouth moved. It was not quite a smile. For today, yes, just Dorian. She did not know what to make of that. But she had already given him her umbrella and her name, and she was cold, and her aunt would be waiting. "Good day then, Dorian," she said. She turned and began to walk. The rain hit her at once. It ran down her neck. It soaked into the wool of her shoulders. Her hair, pinned neatly under her bonnet, began to loosen at the edges. She did not look back. She did not know that he stood there under her umbrella and watched her walk away for a long time, until she turned the corner and was gone. She did not know that he then closed the umbrella carefully, tucked it under his arm, and walked out into the rain himself without opening it again. She did not know that he had been waiting on that street for his carriage, which had a broken wheel 2 streets over, and that he could have gone into any one of a dozen doorways along the way and asked for shelter, and that no one would have refused him. She did not know that he had stood in the rain by choice, because he was thinking, and thinking clearly required a certain kind of quiet that only the rain could give him. She did not know that his full name was Dorian Ravensmere, and that he was the Duke of Winford, one of the richest men in England, and that he had returned to London the week before after 5 years abroad, and that he had been thinking, as he stood in that rain, about how tired he was of women who wanted him for his title, and how he was not sure there was any other kind of woman left in the world. She did not know any of that. She only knew that her hair was ruined, and her boots were soaked through, and she had given her umbrella to a stranger, and she was smiling as she walked, though she could not have said why. Her aunt was waiting at the door when she came in. Aunt Petra was a small, sharp woman with grey hair pulled tight, and a face that had been carved by grief into something narrow. She took one look at Marin, wet through and dripping on the mat, and her eyes went hard. "Where is your umbrella?" "I gave it away." "You gave it away?" "To a stranger," Marin said. She untied her bonnet and let it drop. In the rain. Aunt Petra closed her eyes. She was quiet for a long moment. When she opened them again, her voice was low. "Child, do you have any idea what an umbrella costs?" "I know what it cost. I bought it myself. And now you have no umbrella." "No, Aunt, and you are soaked through." "Yes, Aunt, and you will catch a chill, and I will have to nurse you, and I will have to buy the herbs and the broth, and we cannot afford it, Marin. We cannot afford any of it, and yet you gave your umbrella to a stranger." Marin did not answer. There was no answer that her aunt would accept. She only stood there, dripping, holding her small cloth bag with the new book of poems inside. Her aunt saw the bag. "And what is that?" "A book." "A book." "A book of poems, Aunt. I saved for it." Aunt Petra looked at her for a very long moment. Her mouth was a thin line. Then she turned away. "Go and change your clothes, and put the kettle on, and do not speak to me about strangers or books until you have done both." Marin did as she was told. She peeled off her wet dress in the small cold room upstairs. She hung it over the back of a chair. She rubbed her hair with a rough cloth until it was only damp. She put on a dry gown, an old one, plain grey wool, and went down to put the kettle on the fire. She did not tell her aunt his name. She did not know why. She only knew that his name, whatever it truly was, felt like something small and private, and she wanted to keep it that way for a little while longer. That night she lay in her narrow bed and listened to the rain against the window. She thought about his face. The way he had looked at her, careful and quiet. The way his voice had said her name, as if he was making sure to remember it. Then she fell asleep, and she dreamed of nothing at all. 3 days later, an invitation came. It came in a cream envelope with a heavy red seal, and it was delivered by a footman in a coat so fine that Aunt Petra stood at the door with her mouth open for a full 10 seconds before she remembered to speak. The invitation was to a ball. At Winford House. Given by the Duke of Winford. Aunt Petra held the invitation with both hands, as if it might blow away. She read it 3 times. Then she looked at Maren, who was standing by the window with a piece of mending in her lap. "Child?" "Yes, Aunt?" "You have been invited to a ball at Winford House." "I have?" "You have." Maren set down the mending. She came over and read the invitation herself. The letters were dark and fine on the cream paper. Her name was written at the top, in a hand she did not recognize, but that seemed careful, as if the writer had taken time over each letter. "Aunt," she said slowly, "I do not know the Duke of Winford. Nobody knows the Duke of Winford. He has been abroad for 5 years. He returned last week. Then why has he invited me? That is what I would like to know." They stood there together, looking at the invitation. Then Aunt Petra folded it carefully and set it on the small table by the window. "You must go," she said. "Must I?" "Maren, it is a ball given by a duke. You do not refuse such a thing. You do not have such a thing to refuse in the first place. If there is some mistake, you will find it out at the door and come home. If there is no mistake, then something has happened that we do not understand, and it will be worse to refuse than to attend. But I have nothing to wear." Aunt Petra looked at her for a long moment. Then she went to the small locked chest in the corner of the room, the one she never opened, and she opened it. Inside, wrapped in old paper, was a gown, cream silk with small pale blue flowers along the hem. It was old, but it was beautiful. It had been her mother's. Maren had not known it was there. "It will need to be taken in," Aunt Petra said. Her voice was strange, "but it will do." Maren touched the silk with one finger. It was cool and smooth. It smelled faintly of lavender and old paper. "Aunt," she said, "do not speak." Her aunt said, "Please, child, do not speak just now." The night of the ball, Maren stood in front of the small mirror in her aunt's room and did not recognize herself. The cream silk fit her as though it had been made for her. Her hair had been pinned up by her aunt's tired, careful hands, and a single blue ribbon ran through it. She wore no jewels because they had no jewels. She wore no gloves except the plain ones she had washed twice. She looked, she thought, like her mother. She could not remember her mother well, but there had been a portrait once. And this woman in the mirror looked like that portrait. "Come," her aunt said. "The carriage is waiting." The Duke had sent a carriage. That was the first thing that told Maren this was not a mistake. The second thing was the way she was received at the door of Winford House. A tall, thin butler with white hair took her cloak, and when she gave her name, he did not check any list. He simply bowed and said, "You are expected, Miss Ashcombe. Please come this way." She was expected. The ballroom was enormous. Maren had never been in such a room before. The ceiling was so high that the candles on the great chandeliers looked like small stars. The floor was polished until it shone like still water. There were hundreds of people, all in silks and jewels, moving in slow patterns of dance and conversation, and the sound of it filled the room like the sound of a river. She stood at the top of the stairs and looked down. She did not know a single face. She could smell orange blossom and beeswax, and the faint, sharp smell of champagne being poured from tall bottles. She could hear the music, a slow, careful dance, played by musicians she could not see. She could feel her own heart beating hard against the silk of her mother's gown. She thought, for one clear moment, of turning and going back to the carriage. Then she saw him. He was standing near the fireplace at the far end of the room. He was not dressed as he had been in the rain. He wore dark evening clothes, so fine that they seemed to have been made without seams. His dark hair was brushed back from his face. He was speaking to no one. He was simply standing there, looking across the room, looking at her. Their eyes met, and time slowed down. She saw his face change. It was the smallest change, the kind of change that no one else in the room would have seen. The corner of his mouth moved. His shoulders, which had been very still, shifted the smallest amount. He set down the glass in his hand on the mantelpiece behind him, without looking, as if he did not care where it went. He began to walk toward her. He did not hurry. He walked as a man walks who has decided something and has all the time in the world to do it. The crowd parted for him without seeming to notice they were parting. He passed a countess in gold silk. He passed the daughter of an earl. He did not look at either of them. Maren stood at the top of the stairs and could not move. She could feel her breath in her chest. She could feel the silk of the gown against her arms. She could feel the wooden banister under her hand, smooth and cool. He reached the bottom of the stairs. He looked up at her. "Miss Ashcombe," he said. His voice carried farther than it should have. Heads began to turn. "Sir," she said. Her voice was smaller than she wanted it to be. "I do not think. Will you come down?" She came down. She did not know how. Her feet knew what to do without her telling them. She reached the bottom of the stairs and stopped, and now she was standing directly in front of him, close enough to see the small drops of water that were not there tonight, but that she remembered from before. "You are dry," she said. Something in his face broke open. It was not a smile. It was something deeper than a smile. It was the look of a man who has been waiting for a joke he was not sure would come. "Yes," he said. "I am dry." He held out his arm. She took it. Her hand was shaking. She hoped he could not feel it. She thought perhaps he could. He led her into the ballroom. The music was still playing. The dancers were still dancing. But something had shifted in the room. Faces were turning toward them. Whispers were beginning to move through the crowd, small and quick, like small animals in tall grass. He led her to the center of the floor. "I do not dance well," she said. "Neither do I," he said. "We will manage." He took her hand. He put his other hand on her back. She could feel the warmth of it through the thin silk. She could smell him, now, close as they were. He smelled of soap and clean linen and something else, something like leather and old books. They began to dance. He did dance well. She could tell that from the first step. He did not tell her he had lied because he did not need to. He simply led her through the pattern of the dance, and she followed because he made it easy to follow. "Sir," she whispered. "Dorian," he said. "Sir, everyone is looking at us." "I know. Why?" He looked down at her. His face was close. His dark eyes were quiet. "Because I have not danced with anyone in 5 years," he said, "and because they have never seen you before, and because you are wearing your mother's gown and it becomes you." "How do you know it was my mother's?" "I do not. I guessed. It is old and it is loved." "Was I wrong?" "No," she whispered. "You were not wrong." They danced without speaking for a long moment. The music turned. He turned her with it. Her feet found the pattern. Her heart was still beating hard, but not from fear now. From something else. Something she did not have a name for. "You are the Duke of Winford," she said finally. "Yes, you could have told me. I could have. Why did you not?" He was quiet for a step. Then two. Then he said, "Because I wanted to know if you would give an umbrella to a stranger. And now you know." "Yes, now I know." The dance ended. He did not release her hand. He stood there in the center of the floor, holding her hand, and the whole room was watching, and Maren did not know what to do. "Come," he said. "There is somewhere quieter." He led her off the floor. He led her through a set of tall doors, and down a hall lined with paintings, and into a small room, a library perhaps, with a fire burning low in the grate, and one lamp lit on a small table. He closed the door. He let go of her hand. "Sit down," he said. "Please." She sat down in a small chair by the fire. He did not sit. He stood by the mantelpiece and looked into the fire. And for a long moment he did not speak. "Miss Ashcombe," he said finally, "I owe you an explanation. You do not owe me anything." "I do." He turned to look at her. His face in the firelight was tired. That day in the rain. I had been standing there for over an hour. My carriage had broken down 2 streets away. I could have gone into any doorway. I chose not to. I was thinking about what? About whether there was anything real left in the world. She did not answer. He looked back at the fire. I have been abroad for 5 years. When I came back, I found that everything I had left behind was still the same. The same balls, the same women in the same gowns saying the same things, every one of them wanting the same thing from me. My title, my money, my name. Not one of them saw me. Not one of them wanted anything I could give that was not first written on a piece of paper somewhere. He was quiet a moment. The fire made a small sound. I stood in the rain because I wanted to be cold. I wanted to feel something. I was going to walk back to my carriage, and I was going to send word that I was leaving England again. That night. Do you understand? I had decided. And then? And then a young woman walked past me in the rain and gave me her umbrella. Maren did not speak. You did not know who I was. You had no reason to be kind to me. You were on your way somewhere, and you were carrying something under your arm that you kept dry very carefully, and you gave me your umbrella and you walked away in the rain. It was only an umbrella. It was not, he said. His voice was low. It was not only an umbrella. Not to me. Not that day. She looked at her hands in her lap. I asked at the bookshop, he said. I did not know your name yet, but I remembered which shop you came out of. The man there remembered you. He said you had bought a book of poems. He said you had saved for 6 weeks. He told me your name. He told me where you lived. I sent the invitation the same night. Why? Because I wanted to see you again. You could have simply called at my door. Yes, but I did not know if you would receive me. I did not know if you would be frightened. I thought if I sent a carriage and an invitation, and if you came, then I would know you were not afraid. And I would have a chance to know you a little, and you a chance to know me. She was silent. Was I wrong? No, she said. Her voice was very quiet. You were not wrong. The fire crackled. Somewhere far off the music began again. Sir, she said. Dorian, I do not know how to be at a ball. I do not know how to speak to countesses. I do not have jewels. I do not have anything that this world requires. I know. Then why? Because I do not require any of it either, and it has taken me 30 years to know that. She looked up at him. He was looking at her. His dark eyes were quiet and serious. I am not asking you for anything tonight, he said. I am not asking you for anything at all. I am asking only that you come again. And again. And that we see, slowly, whether the person I glimpsed in the rain is the person I hope she is, and whether the man you glimpsed in the rain is the man you can bear to know better. She thought about it. She took her time. Her hands were folded in her lap. The fire warmed the side of her face. Yes, she said finally. I will come again. He let out a breath. She had not known he had been holding one. Thank you, he said. He walked her back to the ballroom. He did not dance with her again that night. That was a kindness she did not understand until later. He did not want the whole of London to marry her off before she had chosen anything herself. He led her back to the top of the stairs, kissed her hand very lightly, and let her go. She rode home in his carriage. Her aunt was waiting up. Maren sat down at the small table and told her everything. She left nothing out. Aunt Petra listened without speaking, her hands folded on the table in front of her. When Maren was done, her aunt was quiet for a long time. Child, she said finally. Yes, aunt, you must be very careful. I know. He is a duke. I know that too. There will be women in this city who will hate you for this by tomorrow morning. There will be women who will find ways to hurt you. Do you understand? I understand, and he may still change his mind. Men like him, they see something new and they want it, and then the newness wears off, and they do not know what to do with what remains. He might. You must be prepared for that. I will be. Aunt Petra reached across the table and took Maren's hand. Her grip was thin and strong. But child, she said, if he does not change his mind, if he is the kind of man who does not change his mind, then you must not either. Do you hear me? You must not spend this chance being afraid. You must be brave. Yes, Aunt, now go to bed. Maren went to bed. She lay in the dark and listened to the sound of her own breathing. She thought about the way he had said her name in the library. She thought about the umbrella he must still have, somewhere, in that great house across the city. She fell asleep, smiling. The next 2 months moved slowly and quickly at once. He called on her 3 times a week. He came to the small rooms above the milliner's shop, and he sat with her aunt for tea, and he never once looked at the worn carpet or the mended curtains or the plate of thin biscuits as though he noticed them. He spoke to Aunt Petra with the same care he spoke to Maren. He listened when she talked about the vicarage in the country, about Maren's father, about the winter he had died. He said little about himself, but he listened, and Aunt Petra came to trust him, though slowly. He took Maren on walks in the park when the weather allowed. He took her to a small concert once, in the home of a friend of his, where the audience was only 12 people and no one stared. He sent her books, not extravagant ones, but ones he thought she would like. He was almost always right. He did not touch her. He held her hand once, when they were walking under a stand of tall elm trees and the light was coming through the leaves in small gold coins. He held it for perhaps a minute. Then he let it go. He did not press her for more than that. But then the trouble came. It came in the shape of a woman named Lady Cressida Halworth. She was the daughter of an earl, and she had been intended for the Duke of Winford since before he had left for the continent. Everyone had understood it. Her family had understood it. His family had understood it. When he returned to England, she had waited a polite month before making her intentions clear. Then she had begun to make them very clear indeed. She was beautiful. There was no denying that. She had pale gold hair and blue eyes and a mouth that could turn any word into a small sharp knife. She had money of her own and a name and a house on Grosvenor Square and every possible thing a duchess was meant to have. And she had watched the Duke of Winford ignore her for 2 months and dance with a nobody in a made-over gown. Maren met her at a garden party in early June. Dorian had been called away that morning to speak with a man about a horse. He had told Maren he would join her at the party by the time the tea was served. She had come with her aunt. She had been standing beside a rose bush, admiring the way the sun caught in a bee's wings, when Lady Cressida came up beside her. Miss Ashcombe. Maren turned. She smiled politely. Lady Cressida. Lady Cressida did not smile. May I speak with you a moment? Of course. Lady Cressida looked around. Her aunt was across the garden. Dorian had not yet arrived. There was no one within hearing. Miss Ashcombe, Lady Cressida said. Her voice was soft and clear. You will forgive me for being direct, but someone must speak plainly to you, and I do not see anyone else willing to do it. Please speak. You have made yourself a curiosity to the Duke of Winford. Every man of his rank has such curiosities. A dairymaid who sings, a shop girl with a pretty face, a vicar's daughter who gives away her umbrella. It is charming, for a moment. It passes. Maren said nothing. You must understand, my dear, Lady Cressida went on, that a man like him cannot marry a girl like you. He may enjoy your company for a season. He may write you letters. He may kiss your hand. But when the time comes for him to choose a wife, he will not choose someone whose mother's gown has been let out 3 times, and whose aunt keeps a shop, and who has no fortune to bring to his line. He will choose someone like me, because that is how the world is arranged, and no umbrella is going to arrange it differently. The bee moved from the rose. The garden was very quiet. Take my advice, Lady Cressida said. End it now, before you are humiliated. Refuse to see him again. Go back to your rooms and your poems. He will be sad for a week and then he will be grateful, and I will make sure. I will personally make sure that no unkind stories about you are ever spoken again. It is the best you can hope for. Truly it is." She paused. She smiled a small, tight smile. "You are not the kind of girl a duke marries, Miss Ashcombe. You are the kind he remembers fondly. There is a difference. Do learn it." She walked away. Maren stood very still by the rose bush. She could feel her face was hot. She could feel her hands were cold. Somewhere behind her a woman laughed at something, and the sound was very far away. She thought she might be sick. Then she thought, "No, no, I will not be sick. I will not." She turned her head slowly. She looked across the garden at the rose bushes and the small tables and the ladies in their pale summer gowns. She looked at Lady Cressida, who was now speaking to another woman and laughing. She thought about what her aunt had said. Do not spend this chance being afraid. She walked, slowly and steadily, back to her aunt. "Aunt," she said quietly. "Yes, child, I would like to go home now. But I would like to stay first. For at least a quarter hour, so that no one will think I am running." Aunt Petra looked at her face. Whatever she saw there, she did not ask questions. "Very well," she said. "We will stay a quarter hour. Then we will go home." They stayed a quarter hour. Maren spoke with two elderly women about their gardens. She admired a small dog. She thanked her hostess with perfect politeness. Then she took her aunt's arm, and they walked out of the garden. And she did not look at Lady Cressida once, and Lady Cressida did not look at her. In the carriage home, Maren did not cry. She sat very upright with her hands folded, and she looked out the window at the streets going by. Her aunt did not speak. At home, Maren went to her room. She took off her gloves. She sat on the edge of the bed. Only then, only when the door was closed, did she press her hand flat against her mouth and breathe out very carefully, so that no one downstairs would hear. She did not cry. She only breathed. She thought, "She will not have this. She will not make me small. I gave an umbrella to a stranger in the rain because I wanted to. If nothing else ever comes of it, at least it was mine. At least it was mine." Dorian came that evening. He had missed the garden party entirely. Something about the horse had gone wrong, and he had been delayed. He came at 7 and sat in the small parlour and asked how the party had been. "It was very pleasant," Maren said. He looked at her. "Was it?" "Yes." He did not ask again. But after tea, when Aunt Petra had gone into the kitchen, he turned to Maren and said, quietly, "What happened?" "Nothing happened." "Maren." She looked at her hands. "Lady Cressida spoke to me." Ah, she was very clear. He did not speak for a long moment. Then he said, "I am sorry." "Do not be sorry. I do not want anyone to be sorry. I only wanted to tell you." "What did she say?" "That is not important. It is to me." Maren looked up. Her eyes were dry but tired. "She said I am the kind of girl a duke remembers fondly, not the kind he marries. She said I should end it before I am humiliated." He was very still. "Did she?" "Yes." He did not say anything for a long time. He looked into the small fire in the small grate. Then he stood up. He walked to the window. He stood looking out at the street below. "Maren." "Yes?" "Do you believe her?" Maren thought about it. Truly thought about it. She had learned in these last 2 months to say what she meant. "Part of me does," she said. "The part that has always known that the world is arranged in a certain way, and that a vicar's daughter does not marry a duke. Yes, part of me believes her. And the other part? The other part remembers your face in the library. And I believe that too." He turned from the window. He looked at her. "Come with me tomorrow," he said. "There is somewhere I want to take you." "Where?" "You will see." The next day he took her to a place she had not expected. It was a small orphanage in the east of the city. 12 children lived there, in the care of 2 women, and the building was clean but very poor. Dorian did not go inside. He stopped the carriage across the street. He and Maren sat in the carriage and watched. An hour passed. A cart came. A man in a plain coat unloaded sacks of flour and coal and warm blankets and a crate of good boots in small sizes. The women at the door signed a piece of paper. The man tipped his hat and drove away. He never once looked at the carriage across the street. "What is this?" Maren asked. "An orphanage. I see that. But what has it to do with? It receives a delivery every month. From an anonymous donor. The women who run it do not know who sends it. Nobody knows who sends it." Maren was quiet. She looked at him. "You send it. I have sent it for 8 years. Why?" He was quiet a moment. He watched the door of the orphanage close. "Because when I was 7, my mother died," he said, "and my father did not know what to do with me. He sent me to a house in the country and forgot me for 2 years. I was fed and clothed and taught, but I was alone. I have never forgotten what that was. And these children are alone too. And I have more money than one man could spend in 3 lifetimes. It is a small thing. Why do you not tell anyone?" "Because if I told anyone, it would become about me. It would become a fine story about the good Duke. Then it would stop being about them. So I do not tell anyone." She looked at him. He was looking at the orphanage door. "You are telling me?" "Yes, why? Because you gave your umbrella to a stranger in the rain and told no one. I thought you would understand." She sat with that. The carriage was quiet. The horses shifted their feet outside. "I love you," she said. She had not planned to say it. She had not known it was going to come out of her mouth. But it was true, and she was tired of pretending otherwise, and it came out. He turned. He looked at her. "Maren, I am sorry. I did not mean to say it now. In a carriage of all places. But I wanted you to know. Before whatever else happens. Before Lady Cressida or anyone else says anything else. I love you. That is what I know." He did not speak. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached across the seat very slowly, and he took her hand, and he brought it to his mouth, and he kissed the back of it. His lips were warm. He did not let her hand go. "I have loved you since the rain," he said. "I did not know the word for it then. I know it now." She smiled. He did not smile back. Not yet. Because there was still one thing between them, and they both knew it. That thing came a week later, at the largest ball of the season, held at the home of the Duchess of Marhome. Half of London would be there. Lady Cressida would be there. Every whisper that had followed Maren for 2 months would be under one roof. Dorian asked her to come. He asked her to come as his announced companion for the evening. He said he would make a formal announcement of their engagement that night, in front of everyone if she was willing. She said yes. But she asked one thing. "Let me arrive alone," she said. "Let me walk in on my own 2 feet. Let no one say later that you dragged me in on your arm. Let them see me come in by myself." He was quiet a moment. Then he nodded. "As you wish." The night of the ball, she wore her mother's gown again. Aunt Petra had added new lace at the sleeves, worked all week by her own hands. Maren wore a small string of pearls that had also been her mother's, kept in the same locked chest, brought out for the second time in the girl's life. She arrived alone. She stepped out of the carriage. She walked up the wide stone steps. The footman bowed. She entered the front hall. She gave her name to the man at the door. "Miss Maren Ashcombe." The man announced her. She stepped into the ballroom. Every head turned. She had known they would. She had prepared for it. She had told herself, over and over, in the carriage on the way here, that she would not stop walking no matter what she saw. She would walk to the center of the room, and she would stand there and she would breathe. She began to walk. The room went silent. It did not happen all at once. It happened in a slow, soft wave, spreading out from the door where she had entered. The dancers stopped. The musicians, uncertain, played a few more notes and then trailed off. Conversations died. Even the servants with the trays of champagne stopped in place. The whole ballroom, 500 people, went silent. Maren kept walking. She could hear her own heels on the polished floor. She could hear the soft sound of her mother's silk against her legs. She could hear, somewhere far in the back of her mind, her father's voice saying grace over the little supper table at the vicarage, the way he used to. She kept walking. She saw Lady Cressida. Lady Cressida was standing near a pillar. Her face was pale. Her mouth was a thin, small line. Their eyes met, and Maren did not look away, and Lady Cressida did. Maren reached the center of the room. She stopped. She turned, slowly, so that she was facing the top of the room, where the Duke of Winford was standing on the small raised platform beside the Duchess of Marhome. He had been waiting for her. He had been watching her walk the entire length of the room. His face was set and quiet. He stepped down from the platform. He walked to her. The room was still silent. He stopped in front of her. He did not smile. He did not touch her yet. "Miss Ashcombe," he said. His voice carried to every corner of the room. "Your Grace, I have something to say. May I say it here, in front of these witnesses?" "You may." He turned. He looked out at the room. He looked at every face, slowly, without hurry. He looked at Lady Cressida last, and longest, and Lady Cressida looked at the floor. "2 months ago," the Duke said, "I stood in the rain on a small street in London. I had been abroad for 5 years. I had come home to a world I no longer knew how to live in. I was tired. I was not sure I would stay. I stood in the rain because I did not know where to go, and I did not care if I got wet." He paused. A young woman walked past me. She did not know me. She saw a stranger in the rain, and she stopped, and she gave me her umbrella. She walked away without a name and without a thanks she had earned, back into the rain herself, because she thought that a stranger's dryness was more important than her own. He turned back to Maren. "I have thought about that moment every day since. In the rain, that day, I decided 2 things. The first was that if there was one person in the world who was still capable of that kind of kindness, I would find her, and I would know her, and I would learn how to be worthy of her company." His voice was steady. His eyes were on hers. The second was that I would ask her, in front of every person who has ever whispered about her, whether she would do me the very great honor of becoming my wife. The room did not breathe. "Miss Ashcombe," he said. "Maren, will you marry me?" She did not answer at once. She looked at him. She let the moment stretch. She let herself feel it, all of it, the silk of the gown, the weight of her mother's pearls, the eyes of 500 people on her back, the small warm knot in her chest that was not fear anymore. "Yes," she said, "I will." The room did not applaud. That would come later, in confused waves, as people remembered how to move. In that first moment, the room only breathed out, all at once, a long, soft sound like wind through a field of tall grass. Dorian did not kiss her. Not there, not in front of all those people. He was too careful for that. He only took her hand, and he held it, and he lifted it against his own chest so that she could feel his heart, and she could feel it, and it was beating hard. He led her to the platform. He stood beside her. The Duchess of Marhome, who had been in on it from the beginning, smiled a small, careful smile, and gestured to the musicians to begin again. The music began. The dancers began to dance. The room slowly, slowly remembered itself. Lady Cressida left the ball within a quarter hour. She did not speak to anyone as she went. Maren did not see her leave, but she knew she had gone, because a small heavy weight that had been on her shoulders for 2 months was no longer there. Later that night, when the ball was ending and only a few people remained, Dorian led her out of the ballroom and into a small side garden where the lamps burned low along the walls. It was cool. There was the smell of night jasmine. Somewhere in the shadows a fountain was running. He stopped by a stone bench. He turned to her. "Maren, yes, I want to give you something." He reached into the pocket of his coat. He took out a small folded square of dark cloth. He unfolded it carefully. Inside was a strip of umbrella fabric, black, slightly worn at one edge. She looked at it. Then she looked at him. "You cut it," she said. I cut it the day after you gave it to me, before I knew your name. I did not know if I would ever find you. I thought I should keep some piece of it, some proof that the moment had happened, that someone had done such a thing." She touched the small piece of cloth. It was soft. It smelled faintly of rain, still, though that could not be true after so long. "I kept the rest of the umbrella too," he said. "It is in my study. I could not bring myself to throw it away." "Dorian." "Yes?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For chasing me down the street," she said, "even though I never knew you were doing it." He smiled then, at last, a full smile, the first she had ever seen him give. "Thank you," he said, "for the umbrella, even though you did not know who was standing under it." He kissed her then in the small garden, with the smell of jasmine and the sound of the fountain and the cool of the summer night. It was not a long kiss. It was a careful kiss, the kiss of a man who had waited for it and did not want to spoil it by hurrying. When it ended, she pressed her forehead against his shoulder. He put his hand on the back of her head. They stood there for a long time. Neither of them spoke. They were married 3 months later at the small parish church where her father had once preached. Aunt Petra wept through the whole service and pretended, afterwards, that she had not. Maren wore her mother's gown, altered one final time. Dorian wore no fine coat, only a dark plain one, because he said he did not want the day to be about him. They were happy. They were quietly, deeply, ordinarily happy, the way people are happy when they have chosen well and know they have chosen well. She never gave up her small tin behind the tea. She kept it as a reminder. She kept the book of poems too, though now there were many other books beside it. And every year, on a certain grey day in early spring, when the rain came down soft and steady on the streets of London, she and her husband would take a walk together in the rain, without an umbrella between them. Both of them wet through, and both of them laughing, because some things you only understand once, and then you understand them forever. And in the small drawer of his study, wrapped in dark cloth, the small black umbrella stayed, a little more worn each year, a little more soft at the folds. Sometimes, when she was alone in the house, Maren would go into the study and open the drawer and touch it. Just to remember, just to be sure it had all been real, and it was. Every time she opened the drawer, it was still there, waiting for her, the same as it had ever been. The umbrella she had given to a stranger in the rain, the stranger who had turned out to be the whole of her life. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If this moved you, please like, share and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive.